The world around us is changing rapidly, and it all centers around one very important city. The Bible talks about this, so let's get into it. Let's start with a passage, and what we're going to do is we are going to float over to the book of Zechariah. Let's read this. Now, this is chapter 12 of Zechariah, and it says this starting in verse 1. It says, "The burden of the word of the Lord against Israel, thus says the Lord, who stretches out the heavens, lays the foundation of the earth, and forms the spirit of man within him. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup," notice this, "of drunkenness to all the surrounding peoples when they lay siege against Judah and Jerusalem. And it shall happen in that day, I will make Jerusalem," notice this, "a very heavy stone for all peoples. All who would heave it away will surely be cut in pieces, though all nations of the earth are gathered against it in that day, says the Lord." Notice this, "I will strike every horse with confusion and its rider with madness. I will open my eyes on the house of Judah, and I will strike every horse of the peoples with blindness." It's a pretty heavy statement. Look what he goes on to say. This gets heavier. Verse 5, "And the governors of Judah shall say in their heart, the inhabitants of Jerusalem are my strength in the Lord of hosts, their God. In that day I will make the governors of Judah like a firepan in the woodpile, and like a fiery torch in the sheaves. They shall devour all the surrounding peoples on the right hand and on the left, but Jerusalem shall be inhabited again in her own place, Jerusalem." Look what it goes on to say in verse 7. "The Lord will save the tents of Judah first, so that the glory of the house of David and glory of the inhabitants of Jerusalem shall not become greater than that of Judah. In that day the Lord will defend the inhabitants of Jerusalem. The one who is feeble among them in that day shall be like David, and a huge house of David shall be like God, like the angel of the Lord before them. It shall be in that day that I will seek to destroy all the nations that come against Jerusalem." Let me read that last part. "It shall be in that day that I will seek to destroy all the nations that come against Jerusalem." And folks, anti-Semitism is showing its ugly face in ways that we have not seen virtually ever. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be bold enough as in to say that the ugly face of anti-Semitism is even more ugly than what we saw in pre-World War II. It is getting that much more wicked. And folks, I want you to understand something. As the darkness continues to darken, and as these things continue to manifest, we are going to watch the hand of God prove his word to be true, and he is going to prevail. But the nations that curse Israel, they themselves will be cursed. And I want to say this because there's a direct parallel between how the United States of America is treating Israel and how it's faring. One of the very first things that the current president of the United States did was made life a lot harder on Jews. And he was very aggressive about how he did that. Whether it be declaring the Yemeni Houthis as being non-combatant, non-terrorists, whether it, in essence, recognizing the legitimacy of an organization like Hamas, whose whole heart is to destroy Jewish lives, which we know. It doesn't matter what you want to look at, whatever you focus on, understand that the United States of America is in a place of judgment because how it has treated Israel. Make no mistake about it. We have done so much to hurt the nation of Israel, and we are paying a massive price for it. We are paying a massive price for it. Folks, I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that the Biden regime has continued to put people on a pedestal and lift up people who absolutely hate Israel. I featured a video of a woman. She identifies herself as trans. She has an organization called Woke Kindergarten. that actually is funded by our tax dollars and by people like Gavin Newsom and Joe Biden. Now, Joe Biden might not have a direct relationship to this woman specifically. Joe Biden continues to encourage people like this to do the evil that they do. I'm not kidding when I tell you this. This is not an exaggeration. This is not a joke. This is not me playing games. There's nothing like this happening. I am literally as serious could be. And I want you to get this because it's critical. Okay? Women like this, people like this are encouraged in this administration. Watch what this person says. And I can tell you this right now. She doesn't even know what she's talking about. Okay? And I'm going to talk about this in just a second. But watch what she says, because this is going to prove a very hefty point here. Watch this.
Yes, everyone, the rumors are true. I am anti-Israel. I am pro-Palestine. And I am 100% 10 toes down anti-Israel. I believe Israel has no right to exist. I believe the United States has no right to exist. I believe every settler colony who has committed genocide against native peoples, against indigenous people, has no right to exist.
I'm willing to bet she can't even identify several of the terms that she actually used. I don't even know if she can identify what indigenous actually means, because if she would or was able to, then she is intellectually dishonest. But I think she has to rise to a level of being able to understand what she's saying in order to be intellectually dishonest. I don't think that that's the case. This is a woman, I want everybody to understand this, who has been completely blinded by the devil. Why? The devil wants her life to be cursed. The devil actually hates her. So the fastest way he can get this woman to experience every bit of judgment due to her is by getting her to hate Israel. She doesn't believe that the United States should even exist, yet she experiences every benefit of the United States. It is the imperialistic, anti-indigenous, hyper-colonialist, xenophobist, whatever it is that she wants to label the United States of America. It's that infrastructure that pays her salary. It's that infrastructure that gives her the medical care that she receives. It's that infrastructure that pays for her organization to actually go on. It's the United States of America that feeds the monster that she is becoming. I want everybody to recognize that. So it's interesting how she'll curse the United States of America, but you'll never see her go back to Africa. You'll never see her go to the Middle East. You will never see her protest in downtown Gaza. And for those of you that might not notice, what she's wearing around her neck is something that is uniquely and distinctly Palestinian. And if she was in downtown Gaza wearing that, walking down the street, she would not live. So listen to what she has to say.
I believe in a free Palestine, from the river to the sea. I believe one day Palestine will be free.
I would bet you my life on the fact that she has no idea what the river is she's talking about or what the sea she's referring to is. She has no idea that she says earlier that she does not stand for any genocidal nation that exists, yet she's calling for genocide. She's literally calling for genocide. And by the way, if the Israelis are genocidal, if they are considered people who are guilty of genocide, they've done a terrible job at it. And I can give you a piece of advice. Don't ever go to Israel to learn how to commit genocide, because you will actually do the opposite. Just since Gaza was taken over by Hamas and Israel left, they walked away, 1.1 million new Palestinians came into that city, whether it be through birth or whether it be through them moving over there. 1.1 million. That means when we started in the area of Gaza in 1948 with 100,000 Arabs. Now there are over 2 million. To be specific, there's close to 2.4 million. So if Israel is guilty of committing genocide, then I can just tell you this right now, Israel is terrible at it. Do not go to Israel as an example. As a matter of fact, there was believed to be close to 200,000 Arabs that were living in all of Israel when Israel became a state. When the Jews moved in and took swampland and turned it into one of the most beautiful and flourishing areas in the world. The Jews come in, and 1948, there were maybe 250,000 to 300,000 Arabs. Now, there are easily 6 million. So Israel is terrible at genocide. They need to go to genocide school. Because quite frankly, they're terrible at it. As a matter of fact, let me just go over some of those numbers. In 1948, I'm not even going to get to the current day. I'm just going to go from 1948 to 2018. In 1948, in Algeria, there were 140,000 Jews. In 1958, there were 130,000. In 1968, you ready for this? This is not an exaggeration. There were 1,500. By the time you get to the current day, 2018, there were less than 50. In the current day, they believe there are 2 in Algeria. How about Egypt? This one is shocking, and I'm being sarcastic when I say that. There were 75,000 Jews in Egypt in 1948, mostly in the Sinai, but still, it's an extraordinary number. In 2018, there were 100. Right now, the only Jews that they believe that are in Egypt, the only Jews that are in Egypt right now are believed to be the diplomatic corps and some of their family members. So that number is probably 20 or 30. In Iraq, 135,000 Jews in 1948. In the present day, they believe the number is 2 to 5. In Lebanon, 5,000 in 1948, mostly to the south. This is interesting. By 1958, there were 6,000, so the number increased. Today, that number is under 100. In Libya, there were 38,000 Jews to be living in Libya in 1948. 38,000, folks. By the time we get to 2018, that number is 0. Today, there is believed to be 2 to 5 that are there doing official work for the state of Israel. Our thought is they're there undercover, for lack of a better term. Morocco, there were 265,000 Jews in Morocco. When we talk about Morocco, Northwest Africa, about as north as it gets, to the west as it gets, just above Western Sahara. By the time we get to today, that number is not even 500. Not even 500, folks. Syria, 30,000 Jews living in Syria. Today, there's believed to be 10. In Tunisia, 1948, there's 105,000 Jews living in Tunisia. Today, they believe that number is close to 200. Yemen, Aden, 63,000 Jews were living in the southern Arabian Peninsula. Now, there's probably 3. And even then, that's a debated number. 851,000 Jews are represented in the countries that I named. Now that number is in the negative. The amount of Jews that they started with in those countries cannot be accounted for in the places that they moved to, which means many of them likely died or were killed. That's the better way of putting it. These are real numbers. And if you look at the history of the Jews, even in Egypt, the Jews built Egypt into the empire that it became in ancient Egypt. Jews have lived in Egypt since biblical times. Israelite tribes first moved to the land of Goshen during the time of Joseph that we read about in Genesis. It's amazing when you consider people who actually say that the Jews have no right to lay claim on any of the land that they're in, when the Jews themselves were longer in their land than anybody else that we could think of outside of the ancient Egyptians. And what's really interesting is if you go to Egypt today and you talk to the average Egyptian, they all will speak the national language, which is Arabic. Many will speak English, but maybe 1/2 or 1/4 of 1% are actually familiar with the real ancient Egyptian language, which had nothing to do with Arabic and which predated any language being spoken of in that time or any place. Interesting, you think about that. Goes back even before the time of ancient Sumer. Isn't it funny how that all works? It's unique how things have changed. And you go by and you look at the story of all of these nations and what actually happened in all these nations and how they ended up where they ended up. Folks, there's a real story in all of this. And the story has nothing to do with the type of facts that she claims to be depicting. So this is very interesting to understand. And I really want people to strongly pay attention to the reality of what we're seeing here. Look what she goes on to say, and this is what's particularly disturbing, but this is how the devil works. Look at how she finishes this off. Because she's going to tell you where her real focus is. She's going to tell you what she cares about more than anybody else, which she doesn't. She doesn't understand what it means to raise a child. So she doesn't really understand what it means to have a vested interest in the life and the mind of a child. So look at what she says. This is interesting.
Is this news to anybody? White supremacy destroys for the sake of destruction.
I don't even think she can define white supremacy. What she calls white supremacy is anybody who does not sit in the same seat of ignorance that she sits in and speaks the same things. You're white supremacist if you believe in math, because math is a function of white imperialism. You're white supremacist if you believe in being punctual, because time is a function of white imperialism. That's how she thinks. That's the way she thinks. Quite frankly, I'm not angry at her. My heart breaks for her. I did a video on her, and I told everybody pray for her because the enemy has ripped her off. God could do so much with this woman. God could take this woman and start a real revolution against the powers of darkness. God could take a woman like this and use her in ways that she could never even begin to imagine. Yet the hatred that the enemy has caused her to be capitulated to will be the thing that will keep her from ever being blessed. And we have to pray that the Lord will get a hold of people like this, to turn them around and to get to think differently about the life that they're living. So look what she continues to say. And parents, I want you to pay special attention to what she says. Pay very special attention to what she says here. This is critical. Listen to what she says.
Abolition destroys for the sake of creation. We are not the same. I have an unwavering respect for children.
They destroy for the... Can we go back, and then we'll go back to what she says about children, because that's what I really want you to pay attention to, okay? We are not the same. She says abolition destroys for the sake of creation. What are you seeking to abolish? And can you do me this one favor? Can you show me one thing that you've actually created? This is what leftists are characteristically good at doing. They are characteristically good at tearing things down, but they don't create anything. And the one thing that they're actually really good at creating are tools to destroy. This lady right here doesn't know what it's like to build something from the ground up. She has no idea. The Jews that she hates, they know everything about that. The Jews that she hates actually don't build from the ground up. They build from below the ground. You understand what they've had to do? What they've gone through to build the beautiful infrastructure that they've built? The land of Israel was made to flourish only when Jews live in it. Does that mean that Arabs can't live in Israel? No. Does that mean that, any Gentile can't live in Israel? No. But if those people want to be blessed, then they'll let the Jews do what they were called by God to do. And that's dwell in the land that God gave them. When the people of God are blessed, God blesses those that bless the people of God. It's that simple. So she's ripping herself off. But I want you to pay attention to what she says, because this is scary.
Abolition destroys for the sake of creation. We are not the same. I have an unwavering respect for children, an unwavering love and care and compassion for children, a commitment to children and to their freedom, to their learning, to their lives, to sustaining their lives.
Okay, let me just give you a translation for what that means. I am targeting your children. I desire to exploit your children for the purpose of communicating my ideals. I will take advantage of the vulnerability and weakness in your children, and I will go out of my way to make sure that your children do anything that they want without creating any boundaries, and I will have no regard to what happens after that. For every one of her, there's another 100 or 200 or 1,000 or 2,000 that are looking to exploit your children. Wake up to these people. Wake up. They are choosing to let God curse them. Do not allow them to drag your children into that curse. She has allowed herself to be cursed because of what she's given herself to. And then let's just end with the last part of what she says. By the way, let me just remind you on this, okay? Those of us that walk with the Lord are always looking, because we've been taught to do this, to create a dialogue with people, to win them over, because we know what's at risk. Their salvation is at stake, and we will always do everything that we can to bring them into the fold because that's what God wants us to do. Look at her ideal. Let me tell you what she wants to do with anybody that disagrees with her. This is what she wants to see. So watch this, okay? This is what she says. This is her view. Look.
Y'all are the demons. Y'all are the villains. We've been trying to end y'all. Get free of y'all.
Y'all are the demons. Y'all are the villains. We're trying to get y'all, get rid of y'all. We're trying to free us of y'all. You understand what that means, right? It's highly inflammatory language. It's a type of language that says, we want to eliminate you. We want to be done with you. And what you don't hear her say right after she says that is she says, and we're going to continue to do that. We are dedicated to the idea of eliminating you entirely from pretty much the face of the world. So we're going to exploit your children, and that's how we're going to do this. We are going to start this process of eliminating you by getting to your children and using them to aid you in allowing you to be destroyed. That's the way they think. This is the type of exploitation that we continue to see at every level. The kind of destruction that we see at every level. It is disgusting. When you curse Israel, there's no way that you can expect God to bless you.